Did you ever feel like wealthy families are playing a different money game? You see, one family own businesses, property, investments, brands, and assets across different areas, yet somehow it all seems organized. The restaurant is owned by one company, the building is owned by another. The investment sits somewhere else. The family name might not appear directly on everything, and behind it all there is often one quiet structure connecting the pieces together, a holding company. It sounds complicated. It sounds like something only billionaires, lawyers, and private bankers talk about behind closed doors. Yet the basic idea is surprisingly simple. A holding company is a company that mainly exists to own things. It might own shares in other businesses. It might own real estate. It might own intellectual property like brands, trademarks, or media rights. It might hold cash, investments, or other assets. The holding company usually does not sell the coffee, run the hotel, manage the shop, or deal with customers every day. That job belongs to the operating companies underneath it. Think of it like a family tree for money. At the top, there is the holding company. Below it, there may be different businesses or assets. One branch owns property. Another branch owns a business. Another branch owns investments. Another branch owns a brand. The holding company sits above them and connects everything. This structure matters because wealthy families are often not only trying to make more money, they are trying to control, protect, and pass down what they already have. That is the difference between simply earning money and building a system. Most people think wealth is just about how much comes in, a salary, a bonus, a business profit, a good investment return. Wealthy families often think one step further. Where should the money live? Who owns the asset? What happens if one business fails? How can profits from one asset help buy the next one? How does the family keep control over time? Those are holding company questions. The first reason rich families use holding companies is separation. Imagine a family owns a restaurant and the building the restaurant operates in. If everything is inside one company, one problem can threaten everything. A lawsuit, a business failure, a creditor issue, a bad year. The restaurant business has daily risk. Customers, staff, suppliers, contracts, accidents, debt, cash flow problems. The building is a different kind of asset. So a wealthy family might separate them. One company runs the restaurant. Another company owns the building. The restaurant pays rent to the property company. The holding company owns both. This way, the risky operating business and the valuable long-term asset are not sitting in the exact same basket. That does not make the family untouchable. Legal protections depend on the country, the structure, and how things are managed. A badly run structure can still create problems. But the general principle is clear. Do not put every asset and every risk in the same box. The second reason is control. A holding company can make it easier for a family to control many assets through one main structure. Instead of every family member directly owning tiny pieces of every business, the holding company can sit in the middle. The family owns the holding company. The holding company owns the businesses. This can make decision-making cleaner. It can also help avoid chaos as the family grows. Because wealth does not only need to be created, it needs to be managed. One generation might understand the business very well. The next generation might include children, cousins, spouses, different opinions, different risk tolerance, and different lifestyles. Without structure, assets can become messy. People argue over who owns what. Some want to sell, some want to keep, some need cash, some want control. A holding company can help turn a pile of assets into an organized system. The third reason is reinvestment. This is one of the most powerful ideas. When a family owns multiple assets, money from one area can help fund another. A business produces profit. A property produces rent. An investment pays dividends. Instead of every dollar being immediately spent by the family, some of that money can move into the holding company and be used for the next opportunity, buying another property, investing in another business, building cash reserves, funding a new project. This is how wealth can start to compound outside a normal paycheck. The family is not only asking, how much can we spend? They are asking, how can one asset help us buy the next asset? That mindset is very different from the normal income cycle. Most people earn money personally, pay bills personally, spend personally, and try to save what is left. Wealthy families often build structures where assets feed other assets. The fourth reason is protection from lifestyle creep. This part is underrated. If money lands directly in someone's personal bank account, it is easier to treat it like spending money. A bigger house, a better car, more holidays, more luxury. A holding company can create distance between family wealth and personal lifestyle. The money is still connected to the family, but it has a job before it becomes consumption. Some stays invested, some protects the business, some funds future deals, some is distributed carefully. That separation can help prevent a family from eating its own wealth too quickly. Because the biggest threat to wealth is not always a market crash. Sometimes it is a lifestyle that grows faster than the assets can support. The fifth reason is taxes and planning. This is where people often misunderstand holding companies. A holding company is not a magic trick that makes taxes disappear. It is also not something to copy from a video without professional advice. Tax rules depend heavily on the country, the type of income, the ownership, and the legal structure. The useful lesson is broader. Wealthy families tend to plan before money moves. They think about where income is earned, where assets are held, how profits are distributed, and what happens when ownership changes. In some places, certain dividends, capital gains, or business transfers may be treated differently depending on the structure. In other cases, the benefit may be administrative, legal, or strategic rather than purely tax-related. The key idea is that rich families do not only focus on making money, they focus on what remains after costs, taxes, fees, mistakes, and bad planning. What you keep matters as much as what you earn. The sixth reason is succession. This is where holding companies become especially important for generational wealth. Building wealth is one challenge. Passing it down without destroying it is another. A family might have businesses, properties, investments, and cash reserves. If everything is owned personally and informally, the transition to the next generation can become complicated. A holding company can help define ownership, voting rights, management roles, and how profits are shared. It can make it easier to separate control from benefits. For example, one child might be involved in running the business, while another is not. One family member may be good with operations. Another may be better as a passive owner. Without a structure, those differences can create conflict. With a structure, the family has a better chance of turning wealth into something that survives beyond one person. This is why holding companies are often connected to family offices, estate planning, and long-term wealth preservation. At a certain level, the question changes. It is no longer only how do we get rich, it becomes how do we stop starting over every generation. That is the generational wealth question. And a holding company is one possible tool in that bigger system. The seventh reason is strategic visibility. Rich families do not always want every asset connected directly to one person. Sometimes there are privacy reasons, sometimes there are negotiation reasons, sometimes it simply looks more professional for a business or property to be owned by a company rather than an individual. This does not mean hiding illegal activity. It means ownership can be structured in a cleaner, more professional way. Large companies do this too. Think about famous holding company structures. Berkshire Hathaway owns many different businesses and investments under one umbrella. Alphabet was created as the parent company above Google and other projects. The idea is similar. One top-level structure can own and organize different assets underneath it. At a family level, the numbers may be smaller, but the logic can be similar. Own the pieces in a way that makes the whole system easier to manage. Now, does every person need a holding company? No. For many people, it will be unnecessary, expensive, and too complicated. If someone is just starting out, the first steps are usually much simpler. Build an emergency fund. Pay down expensive debt. Start investing. Increase income. Learn how assets work. A holding company becomes more relevant when there are multiple assets, businesses, properties, investors, family members, or long-term ownership questions. In other words, it is usually not step one. It is a structure people consider when the money path becomes more complex. But even if you never create one, understanding why they exist teaches an important lesson. Wealthy families do not only collect money, they build containers for money. They separate risk. They organize ownership. They create systems for reinvestment. They protect assets from lifestyle pressure. They plan for the next generation. That is the real lesson. A holding company is not just a legal structure, it is a way of thinking. Instead of seeing wealth as one big pile of money, it sees wealth as a system of assets, risks, cash flows, and decisions. And once you understand that, you start to see money differently. A business is not just income. A property is not just a building. A brand is not just a name. An investment account is not just a number on a screen. Each asset has a role. Each risk needs a boundary. Each dollar needs a job. That is why rich families use holding companies. They are not only trying to become wealthy, they are trying to make wealth organized enough to last.